Hi, and welcome to the Locker Room. I am one of your hosts, Justin Ham, and thank you so much for joining us as we journey through tough issues that guys face as athletes and as humans. Let's welcome our guest today, Kyle Clairmont, as he is here today to help us navigate the questions of guys, God, and does it matter? So, first of all, welcome to the podcast, Kyle. We're so glad you're here. Just opening question. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you and I get connected?
Yeah, well, first of all, Justin, just such an honor to be here, and I'm just so happy to just be a witness to all God's goodness and all the amazing things He's done around me, done through me, and it's just such a blessing to be here and to talk about that. So appreciate you for that. But yeah, so my name's Kyle. I'm a junior at St. Joseph's College in Maine. I play on the men's soccer team, and I'm a relatively new believer. I've only been saved for just over a year now, and me and Justin met through the 360 camp down at Gordon College this past summer, and just got talking, and he mentioned this podcast, and just sounded like an amazing opportunity to minister to people that are in the exact same situation I was in. So just a blessing to be here, and that's a little bit about me and my background.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you listening, so Kyle was a huddle leader at our 360 camp. We had over 130 athletes from all over the Northeast region of the United States come to this camp at Gordon College, and Kyle was one of those leaders. And I think it was the first night Kyle was shared his testimony, and his testimony is powerful. And I know personally, three of my own athletes were able to come to this camp. I'm a coach as well, and they heard Kyle's testimony, and it was pretty amazing. So it's just incredible to see what happens when a young person steps out in faith and then shares what the Lord has done. So that's hopefully what today's going to be, Kyle. So thank you again for being here.
Of course,
Um,
yeah.
first thing, I guess, you said you've only been a believer for a little over a year. So what was it a year ago that God got a hold of your heart and put you in this position that you're in now? I'm sure soccer's involved because I know you're an athlete, so maybe that's part of your story.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah. So, just growing up, just to like back up a little bit, growing up, I didn't have any church background growing up. I'm from around Burlington, Vermont, which is a very, very low church area. Actually, one of the stats I always use that it's one of the highest rates of atheism in the country is in right in
Mm,
Burlington, Vermont. So, growing up, didn't have any church experience or experience around other believers. So there wasn't any light really that I was shown as far as God or religion, just in general, let alone Jesus. So. But growing up, I always really loved playing soccer. That was the thing that always kind of was my God, the thing that I sort of worshipped, if you will. I lived and breathed soccer and went through some hardship. I wasn't like the best player, but I always wanted to make it to the
sure.
next level, and I had big dreams of playing Division 1, playing pro. And my junior year, I got or my sophomore year, sorry, I got cut from my um, varsity team, didn't make the varsity team, and I had just poured all my hours into soccer. I just poured everything into it, threw everything
Yeah.
aside, my family aside, my friends aside, any opportunities of exploring anything else besides soccer. So I just kind of poured everything into that, and I did get a lot better. I got a lot better. Senior year, like junior year rolled around, I was starting for the varsity team, playing really well, started talking to colleges, and then kept that going, still playing. Senior year rolls around. That's going well again. We have an amazing start to the season. I mean, I'm like one of the best players in the state now. I was leading the state in assist, or I led the state in assists that year. I
Wow.
got all state and everything, and I was like, wow, it's cool. And um, but it just never really filled my heart up. And I remember specifically there's one game where we were dominating. And at this stage in the season, we had one of the best starts that my school has ever had. We were undefeated. We're like all the way to through the end of the season, pretty much. We're dominating. We hit the post like 7 times, and they end up scoring this crazy fluke goal, and our season just like ends like that.
Oh,
And one of the biggest things I wanted to do was win a state championship, and that all just went away like that. And the 2 years that I just poured into just soccer, like that
yeah.
dream of winning a state championship just went out the window. And I was like, wow. And the things that I did get, like leading the state in assists, talking to colleges, all state, all that stuff just didn't fill me up at all. But so freshman year going into it, I kind of had a decision to make of either to keep going all in on soccer, which obviously like wasn't working. It didn't fill me up, didn't fulfill me at all. And double down on I could double down on that and keep going after that or choose another path. But I decided to double down on that my freshman year and just really went all in. I sacrificed all my relationships and I spent over somewhere from like 6 to 8 hours like every day playing
Wow.
soccer, let alone the other things, the workouts, the dietary piece,
Yeah.
and all of that, and the relationships I lost, the memories I lost, and the opportunity to even remotely think about following God or opening the door to that. So I did that, and that just didn't pan out well my freshman year. I didn't play a lot in the fall, and then in the spring, I was playing really, really good. I was um, just at the peak of my game, and I still was like barely seeing the field. And that was just before the summer happened. So a lot of disappointment, 3 years go by, pouring my heart
Sure.
out into this and just
Yeah.
not really getting what I thought I would. And getting to where I wanted to get and the things that I did get were just like very it felt very empty compared to the fulfillment I thought I would feel from it. So I went home and I didn't really had any um experience with drugs or anything, but I tried one of my buddies had edibles and I took like way more than I was supposed to. I had no idea really what was happening, but I was at a really like low spot because I'd come back from just this lack of fulfillment and just a
Sure.
disappointing year. And I took way too much. I had no idea. I took way too much and ended up passing out on my bathroom floor and got up and like full-blown panic attack. A lot of times, like when you're working out, the most your heart will beat when you're working out is like 200-ish. And that's when you're like fully worked out, like
You're
you going
sprinting
all
all
in,
100 miles an hour. Yeah, yeah.
all in. And mine's going like I'm at a standstill, completely still, and it's beating like 250, like at least
Wow.
probably. It's crazy. And I thought I was gonna die. It's like 1 a.m. I'm barging in my mom's room and I'm like, I'm gonna die. I'm like calling my loved ones and like I'm just like, I think this is it.
Sure.
Thankfully, like I didn't. It was just a panic, but that just kept happening. And for like 2 months, I had panic attacks like 3 or 4 times a day and just completely just destroys me. Couldn't, I had no freedom. I couldn't go more than like 5 minutes from my house because it was just unfamiliar and it was scary.
Yeah, sure.
And it's hard to really describe, honestly, and to put it in perspective because when my mind is in that state, it makes everything just so irrational. So you can't, it's hard to talk about it and make it make sense to people talking about
Sure.
it, but it's just a terrible experience. And the biggest thing I can just equate it to is with that from the panic, I just had a ton of anxiety and just got into a really depressed spot because well, yes, like I was having these panic attacks and they're horrible. And every single time I have one, I genuinely think I'm going to die. Like you're just convinced in your
Yeah,
brain you're going to die. So you
sure.
feel like I'm having a near-death experience 3 or 4 times a day. Um, but um,
That sounds like it must have been exhausting.
yeah, and that was the biggest thing, and that was the thing that got me the most is because I had spent I don't know 8 hours a day playing soccer, and then all of a sudden I couldn't spend. There was no time I could pour into it because I was so exhausted. So I had gone from practicing 8 hours a day every single day, following this like military like schedule to being able to literally just getting out of bed in the morning was a battle. Like
Mm,
genuinely, like not even it's incredible how that was harder just getting out of bed in those 2 months, especially the further along I got into it. It turned into just a battle, just doing everyday things. And that was the thing that really got me and just kind of kept that snowball of depression going. And eventually, like it got to the point where I was just like, the depression got bad and I was started to become suicidal because I
yeah.
was like, and what's the point? Like everything's gone. All the dreams I had of soccer haven't paid off, and now I can't even get out of bed in the morning, and it's not getting any better. It kept getting worse, honestly. My vision is slowly getting worse. My memory is just, I can feel every time I have a panic attack, I can feel my memory, like short-term memory, gets slightly worse and worse and worse each
Mm,
time. So it's only getting worse. It's not getting better. And I just feel like I have nothing to live for. So I was like, I got suicidal, and there was one. I hadn't like made up my at this point. I hadn't like made up my mind or anything, but I was like, I don't know how much longer I can do this, to be honest.
Sure.
Um, so one night on the 4th of July, actually, which is a very special day for me. My family always does a ton of stuff on the 4th of July. But this 4th of July ended up just being completely alone. It's just the way things worked out. My friends had already had plans. My mom was away doing something else, and it was just me. And I remember walking around my neighborhood and late at night, and I was just bawling my eyes out because I was like, I just can't do this anymore. Like, and my friends stopped hanging out with me because I couldn't see them. I couldn't go like more than 5 minutes away from my house, and I was
Yeah.
embarrassed to be around them because I was like, I'm just panicking all the time. I can't do anything. I'm not myself, and I don't want to lose my mind and do that in front of them. So I lost all those relationships. I lost the soccer. I felt like I just lost everything, and that just everything was taken away from me, and my freedom was taken away from me. And I was just crying and just like pouring my heart out and crying so hard that I just like couldn't see. And I remember as clear as day, when I'm walking around the corner, walking around this one corner as I'm about to get to my house, I hear like the audible voice of God, not in my head, but just as clear as you
Sure.
hear me speaking on this podcast, just the audible voice of God, just saying my name, Kyle, just like that. And for like 30 seconds, everything vanished. My
Wow.
anxiety, my depression, my suicidal thoughts, my vision was completely like healed. And my memory just like completely restored the short-term memory for like 30 seconds. And it was so beautiful. Like everything and just the sense of peace. Like I've never felt that level of peace my entire life, let alone in this time where I was at such a
Yeah.
low spot with anxiety and depression and these suicidal thoughts. And it was just incredible. And when I went home that night and I gave my life to God. And in that period, I didn't really touch on it, but in that little bit of period, that 2 month time where I was going through this, I could kind of start to dabble in Jesus and what that looked like. So that had kind of been on my mind, but there was never really any breakthrough with
Sure.
that. And that was the moment I was like, okay, if anything's going to get me out of this, it was going to be God. Um, because he was the one that gave me hope in the darkness, that gave me the light in the
Right.
darkness, that nothing else in this world could give me the light in the darkness. And it was God that did that, that gave me that hope, that
Yeah.
restoration. And
Wow.
yeah, so thankfully that stuff's all been healed. God's taken care of that, and it's just been beautiful. And since then,
Mhm.
I've just that was only last year, and since then now I'm back at school, and um,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That's incredible. Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for sharing. There's a lot of vulnerability that can be unpacked in there. And I know some people maybe not quite as open and willing to talk about it. So thank you for sharing all of that. That can't be something that most people can understand, but I know there's going to be some listeners that really are be like, I know exactly what that is. I know exactly what that's like. And those are the people you said something in there that I thought was powerful. I was actually taking quite a bit of notes listening to you. But one of the things you said was that it's hard to describe an irrationality that'll make sense because of how it made you feel. And I think there's something with that, especially in our younger generation, that there's a lot of irrationality that they see on a daily basis. So as somebody who's walked through that right now, what would be something that maybe encouraging that you could say to somebody who's listening? Maybe somebody who isn't even actively seeking after Jesus just yet, but like what would be some kind of encouragement that you might be able to share with them to help them get through?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And honestly, that was one that I really struggled with in that time because the way it works like scientifically with like the panic attacks, for example, is my brain feels the panic attack is caused from this huge rush of adrenaline coming into my body. That's why my heart was beating insanely fast. And that just
Sure.
switches on my fight or flight mode. But I
Yep.
have nothing to fight or flight against. I'm literally just standing there and hanging out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it has no idea what to do, and it creates these irrational thoughts because when that adrenaline comes in, that's what you're meant to do. So it kind of turns on your more like primitive animal brain, if you will, is
Sure.
always how I had it described. So it's really difficult because you're literally fighting in my situation, for example, I'm literally fighting against my own body's like natural response because it's just trying to protect me. So That one's difficult. I think it's what helped me the most was looking at it from the third person perspective.
Hmm.
So, for example, like it sounds crazy, but there was one time when I was having one, I was having panic and I was like scared for my life that I was gonna like teleport up the stairs or something. And it's like it's crazy. It's obviously like, Kyle, what do you mean? Obviously you're not gonna teleport up the stairs now. It's easy to say
Right.
that.
Sure.
But when you're in that, like, and anyone that's listening that's, I don't know, has these irrational thoughts and like stuff like that, or maybe you've experienced like a panic and had those thoughts, like I get it, and I know that it's just crazy. But one thing that helped me was thinking about it from like the third person perspective. So from like someone else watching me, like trying to think about it from their perspective. Because when I did that, then I would be able to put into perspective, okay, like I'm not actually like if I was someone watching someone go through this, I would be like, hey, like obviously you're okay. You're gonna be fine. Your brain's just kind of going crazy right now. I don't know if that makes sense, but I
No,
think
it
just
does. It
zooming
does.
out and thinking about it as what you're going through, of watching it from someone else's perspective, I think is was the biggest thing for me and the thing that helped me the most. Besides, obviously, like frankly, like following Jesus helped me the most. Like,
Yeah.
to be completely honest, because it's like, okay, like if God's got me, I have nothing to worry about. If I die, I'm gonna be up with him because I've trusted my life in him. So that was the thing that gave me the most hope. But outside of that, I would say like that is a tool that I used a lot.
Yeah. I like that because I actually pulled two things out of that. The first thing you mentioned was like you were able to understand actually what was happening when you were having a panic attack. That adrenaline kicked in, that
Mm,
fight or flight. So I think that's something that I think could be useful to people that are listening. It's like, all right, this is actually real. Like this is something that is happening. Like I'm not losing it. It's just this is what's happening inside my body. And then the second thing I like that you said about was like a strategy to how to like if I was watching this happen to somebody else in that third person. Like I think that's super, super helpful. Um, how long did it take you to come up with those strategies? Because you seem like a pretty intelligent human. So have you always been kind of wired that way, or is that something you had to develop over time?
no, I appreciate that first of all. But my sister, like praise God, my sister, it's crazy how this works out because my sister is someone who works in mental health and she
Oh,
helps
okay.
people. She's helped people with panic attacks. So she
Sure.
was one of the people I leaned on um, during that time, especially at the start. And she gave me those strategies and kind of just walked me through what that looked like and what was happening in my body. That strategy in particular was actually one that I kind of came up with myself. But she was a huge blessing in that she helped me with a lot of the
Sure.
other things and giving me that knowledge. I completely agree with what you said. Like having knowledge over what's actually happening and knowing that it's real and what's going on
Yeah.
allows you to come up with these strategies so much better, if that makes sense. But knowledge is absolutely power.
Yeah.
There's a lot to that.
No, I think too, in listening to that, the thing that keeps coming back to me is, you had mentioned that you were chasing after soccer so hard that like your relationships changed, right? That became something. So to me, it's almost like you were going after this one direction, which we all do, right? We're all chasing after that thing. And along the way, like your relationships kind of, and you found yourself, I don't want to say isolated, that sounds wrong, but it's like you were just so attached so after that one thing, which guys specifically do. They get their mind set on something and they just chase after it. And it sounds to me like you're the what helped you come back from the panic attacks and come back was relationships, right? Like you were literally walking and you heard God said something, God got your attention. So there's a connection point. Your sister had this ability to help you deal with the mental health aspect, and that's a connection point. So one of the things, like I'm in active counseling, like every 2 weeks I meet with my counselor, and he says it all the time. He's like, relationships hurt us, but relationships can also heal us. So like as I guess the long-winded question is, how did the power of community play into your transformation?
Yeah, that was a huge part, honestly. And I think community was the lack of community, I think was why why I struggled for so long because of the nature of panic attacks are it's very
Yeah,
isolating and all you want to do is just crawl up into a ball and be seen by no one and just be by yourself and alone. But when I got back into community, when I got back to school, and actually like FCA is a relatively big part of my testimony because I had given my life to God, to Christ. But then I was like, okay, well, I don't really know what to do now because, like I said, like there wasn't anyone around me that was following
Sure.
Jesus, and having FCA at my school at St. Joe's was huge, and having that community around me um, was massive for my growth, and not only with God, most importantly, but also just getting out of that state was really important. Like my best friend actually had a very similar timeline to me, so same class as me. But he found Jesus around like the same time because we were working
Wow.
through it together. We come from similar backgrounds, and I was like sharing with him what I'd been through, and we kind of just worked through it together, and that was huge for me. And he saw me where I was at and didn't think of me less, and that was huge. So
Yeah.
he was also huge in that. And having the right people around you, having just anyone around you is so big for things of like the mental health nature. All you need is just one person that can just see you for who you are and love you for um,
Right.
where you're at and see you where you're at, and don't need to be conditional about it. Thankfully, we have someone in Jesus that's always there,
That's right.
but also having someone that's like physically there is also just that's nice too.
Of course. One of the things that, I've noticed over just, I mean, I'm almost 40, so I'm not quite old, but I'm getting closer to that stage of life where I could say I've seen some things. Like the insurance commercial, I know a thing or two because I've seen a thing or two. But I one of the things that I've noticed is a lot of times, I mean, I struggle with mental health issues as well. Like my whole life growing up, sports was always a saving thing for me. But I felt like similar to you, you mentioned that you were when you were in the midst of your panic attacks, you didn't want to lose your mind in front of your friends. I think that's what you actually said. And
Yeah,
so that's was just part of why we isolate, and I would isolate because I didn't want them to see what I was like. And I think a lot of times, like my friends, I think they genuinely did care about me. They just didn't know what to do with me because like they didn't understand what was happening. They didn't understand. Like for me, mine wasn't panic attacks, mine was obsessive compulsive disorder. So like I constantly had to like wash my hands, like I had to have my hands clean. Like I was terrified I was telling a lie, so I was always asking my mom, am I lying, or like am I doing this wrong? Like I didn't want it to come across the wrong way. That's what I struggled with, and I had to go see and get help. And my friends are just like, why are you telling on yourself, you didn't do anything wrong? And like they just didn't understand, and it got to the point where they just kind of stopped inviting me to hang out because and that made me feel like there was something wrong with me and that I was broken. So I don't know. I don't know if you could relate to that.
yeah, I can definitely relate to that. And it wasn't that my friends were mean and my or unsupportive, but I just didn't. I was like I just refused to even attempt to bring a
Yeah,
light to that. And I think a common phrase that is kind of said, but it really is true. Like if you can't be yourself around your friends, if you can't be real and be vulnerable with where you're at, then do you really want to be friends with them in the first place? And for me, my
yeah,
friends, I can absolutely do that around them. My friends back home, I think I just restricted myself because I was
right.
scared of being vulnerable. I've always been a huge people pleaser. I've just
Yeah,
always been someone that hates stepping out of their shell or being looked at as like weak or different or someone that's struggling, anything like that.
yeah,
So that was something that was really hard for me, even though I know they would have been there for me. Um,
yeah,
yeah,
man. That's huge. And I mean, and I don't, we don't have to keep spending time in that one thing. One of the biggest phrases I can remember when you shared your story at 360 is, when you heard God say your voice, there was like that 30 seconds where you felt hope. And that hope that this wasn't going to last forever is what kind of gave you the reason to keep going on. You talk a little bit about that because I can imagine there's people listening that it's like, if Jesus will take this all away, I'd do it right now. But it like, does that mean that life's going to get easier? I don't think so. But maybe from your perspective, what do you have to think about that?
yeah. Actually, one thing I realized after I finished just sharing my testimony was like, I forgot to realize it. So like after that 30 seconds, that stuff came back,
Yeah,
and I felt that come back, and everything that I had just been delivered from. But I knew that there was hope and that the hope was coming from the source of God. It wasn't coming
Mm,
from anything external. It wasn't coming from, oh, like I'm gonna go play more soccer and that's gonna work out better. It wasn't coming from, I don't know, texting girls or swiping on Tinder or whatever. It was coming from God.
right.
And I think that was what stuck with me is in that time, all I needed was the hope. And while yes, it still was difficult. I still had the panic attacks. I still had the anxiety. I mean, the suicidal part after that moment had faded because I knew that I had hope. The reason I was suicidal was because I thought there was no hope. But that was the one thing that went away, but everything else stayed.
Yeah,
And it was still a battle. And it's still going to be a battle, but you're fighting for a purpose now. When you follow Jesus, you are now fighting for a purpose. You're not just fighting for to live another second that might feel meaningless when you're just living in your own bubble. And I
yeah.
think that was the biggest thing for me. It was just
Mm.
the hope of fighting for something bigger.
So how has that fight been now? So you're a year into it. You're now super involved with FCA. You know, you're playing soccer. How is that going now a year later, a little over a year later?
Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely still there's still struggles, but it's actually funny because I was just talking about this today with some guys at FCA. We have a Bible study in the morning on Fridays, and one of the things that God kind of spoke to me today, we're talking about struggle, and when you start following Jesus and when He dwells in you, your challenges flip. So the things that, for example, like before you're following Jesus, things like sin, things like I don't know, doing like having lustful thoughts or whatever, lustful actions or swearing or talking bad about people, gossiping, those things are easy. You start following Jesus and that becomes hard because now you're going away from those things, right?
Yeah,
Jesus says to deny yourself, right? And those are the things that become hard is becoming disciplined in him and denying yourself. But then the things that before you're following Jesus, the self-worth, the self-doubt, the anxiety, the guilt, the living in the future, the shame, that stuff that's hard becomes easy when you're following Jesus, right? Because he gives you all that. He gives you your worth, he gives you your identity, he gives you your trust, like you put your trust in him and you know that he's going to come through. And I
mm,
think it's interesting because just to reiterate, like, yeah, the challenges flip. So the challenges now is can I continue to spread the word? Can I continue to be bolder in my faith? And that's been one of the things I've been struggling with because I'm at a very secular campus and really trying to be bold in my faith and be a light and just do everything I do, not for my glory or to look cool in front of people, but just for God's glory and to bring people to Him because He's been the biggest light in me, and I know that I need him
yeah,
more than anything, and I know that everyone here needs him more than anything. So that's been my biggest challenge is just stepping outside my comfort zone. I mentioned it a little bit before, but I've always been a huge people pleaser, and being
yeah,
different, stepping out and proclaiming Jesus, and even something as simple as like when I'm surrounded by like 10 people at the dinner table, just praying, like little things like that. Just being bold has been a challenge, but a good challenge, and I can just feel my faith growing through continuing to be bold in that and fight the good fight.
yeah. As
Yeah.
a fellow people pleaser, what is it for you? Because I find that this happens like I you're I played sports growing up too, right? And I think high school and I played in college, basketball, soccer in college. For me, I think yeah, I wanted to please the coach. So it's like you want coach to like you, you want coach to be happy, so it's that idea of people pleasing. What is it? What do you think it is about that positive affirmation? So here, let me ask it this way. So here's my theory. This is my theory. I think for me anyway, you mentioned it before, like how once you start following Jesus, like you have that self-worth, that value that he gives you. But I know for me, sometimes it's hard for guys in general, it's hard to latch onto that because we still have the struggles from like before we have that encounter with Jesus. So remembering that we have worth, remembering that we have value. So one of the things that this is my working theory, that high level achieving athletes want their coaches to like them, want their coaches to be proud of them. And I think that's something that is not necessarily a bad thing. But I know for me, that was my way of making sure, like, hey, if I can get positive feedback from my coach in some way, that's making me feel like, hey, I'm worth something because my coach thinks I'm worth something.
Right.
That's something that I've kind of been thinking about. And as a coach now, currently, it's like, how can I now, if that's how I was thinking when I was 17, maybe I can do a better job of making sure they don't feel that way. But what are your thoughts on that? Like, our worth comes from our performance. Do you think that's something that a lot of guys struggle with?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I even struggled like the first 2 weeks of school, I was really struggling with that. Even though I had my like 2 weeks ago now, I was really struggling with that because I feel this huge burden to be this light and to start all these and just have like these electric Bible studies where there's just massive revelation, there's huge turnouts,
Yeah.
and people are giving their life to Christ, and just everything's just happening, and there's just feeling the weight of that pressure and feeling like, oh, if I didn't do that, then I'm not doing what God wants me to do, and I'm letting him down, and I'm not seen as good enough by him. And honestly, that's been my biggest struggle the past month is like my identity is in Christ, but I've been struggling with that performance. One verse I would share from that. So this comes from Matthew 3. And this is again, so Matthew 3, before Jesus has even done anything, this is when he goes, he gets baptized just after he's baptized, and the Holy Spirit comes down, and the heavens open up, and God the Father says, "This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased." And the interesting thing about this is before Jesus has done anything, right? He hasn't
Yeah.
started any of his ministry, he hasn't started any of his work, and God the Father is already saying, "This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased." And I think that's the thing, that's the one verse that I really just keep in my mind because we know that before we even do anything, before any of our works, that we are already loved by God, that He already paid the ultimate price for us, and that we don't have to do anything to earn His love. And while I do appreciate that that can be easy to say, it's a very hard concept to really ingrain into your mind.
Yeah.
Um, but my encouragement would just be to continue to harp on that and continue to replay those verses in your head that it is finished, that it's done, and that no matter your performance, you're already loved by God, and it's not your performance that saves you, it's Jesus, and that's
Mm,
ultimately what we're fighting for.
that's right. That's good. That's a word. That's a word right there, brother. That's good. That's awesome. Well, I guess just as we're kind of wrapping up, so this is your junior year, so you still got this year and next year. Do you have any more eligibility after that, or is it just those 2 years?
Just those 2 years, yeah. Unless
Okay.
I heard the NCAA might pass another year of eligibility for people.
Hey, that'd be
So we'll
pretty cool.
see. We'll see what happens there. But yeah, that's just two right now.
Okay. So in these next 2 years, that's something that those people listening, I can. It's the joy of working with FCA. Like when we came back from that 360 camp, is like you're around 150 people who are in the same mindset as you, and you come back and then it's like I want to replicate that everywhere. And I get that. That's something that I struggle with. That's even something that my athletes that went to 360 had the same thing is, I want to bring that here. And it's just a matter of, we're getting huddles started. They're getting huddles started in their school, and you got a huddle that you're a part of now. So I just want to encourage you, and as I'm encouraging them to just keep doing the small things, because to whom much is given, much is required. And if you're faithful in much or small things, you'll be faithful in bigger things. And that sounds like that's something's happening where you're at. So just keep fighting that good fight. But as we kind of close this down, any other thoughts, anything you want to share with anything on your heart specifically that we haven't talked about that you just want to get off your chest or share a word? Obviously, this is for guys by guys, but obviously not everyone listens to these things. It's not just boys only, but just in general, any other thoughts we didn't cover that you just want to get off your chest or share?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd like to touch on that last point you made. I think that's really good. And one thing that God's been speaking a lot to me, especially in this situation where I'm at, where I've been putting a lot of pressure on myself and performance, is to take pride, not pride, but to be pleased with the mundane and enjoy the mundane. And what I mean by that is like a small Bible study, saying hi to someone, having a good conversation with someone. Maybe it's even a conversation about Jesus, but it's very surface level. I
Right.
think looking at those things and just being proud of them, being proud of those little things is huge. I think for me, one thing is I'm like, okay, I got to do these big, massive things. Like anytime I talk to someone, like they better be giving their life to Christ or else I'm
Yes.
not doing a good enough job.
Right.
And I think by doing that, we kind of, one thing that I've caught myself doing is I'm kind of trying to put God's will, like control God's will a little bit, if you will.
Right.
And I think just enjoy the mundane, enjoy the slow process, enjoy the patience because that just makes the harvest so much better. It's a tough process and it can be hard in those little things when you feel like you just keep planting seeds and nothing's sprouting and you just keep planting, but you just have to keep
Yep.
going and um, when when that harvest comes, it'll be beautiful and just to continue to
Amen.
trust in that and
Amen.
enjoy the process, the little
Yes, sir.
things. I think I mean, I'm really speaking to myself a lot there too. That's
Yeah.
huge. But that'd be the biggest thing I'd say. And to anyone that just hasn't, maybe you're someone that's going through some of this anxiety, some of this depression. Man, the thing that brought me out of it was Jesus, frankly. There's no better hope than him, and you put your hope in him, someone that's eternal, someone that can't fail. You can't have anxiety because there's nothing to be worried about, because he's already sealed your fate in heaven. All you have to do is accept him into your heart and pick up your cross and follow him. And it's a beautiful thing. So that would just be my encouragement, and to step out in that is truly a beautiful thing, and I couldn't be more grateful for that, and um, just honored to be here and to talk about
Yeah.
that, be a witness of such an amazing movement in God and how he's moving.
Yeah. Well, I can't thank you enough, Kyle, for coming on and spending some time with us. Um, I don't know what your thoughts are. I don't know if you want to share your socials or anything like that, which if you do, we can throw them in our episode description. That way, if they want to follow you and keep an eye on your story, if that's something you want to do, or if not, that's okay. So we
Yeah,
can
yeah,
figure
we
that
can
out.
throw those in the description. And anyone, you're more than please reach out to me if you have any follow-up questions. Obviously, it's hard to fit a lot into into a short podcast. So I'm more than happy to help anyone going through anything. I'd love to help anyone out, and please feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much, Kyle. We're so excited to see what God's going to do in your life, and thank you for being willing to share your story. And those of you listening, check us out the next time as we continue our conversation of guys, God, and does it matter on FCA the Locker Room. Thank you all so much. Until next time.